Hello, book lovers. Good day. I hope all is well with you all. This is the Blue-Eyed Black Devil, and I'm here to give a. Let's see, how shall I rephrase this? The other day, I asked you all, would you rather me give a midway recap and review? But I think a lot of you, or if you wanted me to wait until I finished reading the book to give a completed recap and review, but most of you wanted the midway. And I tried to do that, but I just had too many notes. So since I'm not going to do a halfway mark, I've decided to break it up into like 3.5 installments. So I'm prepared to give you installment number 1 of the book Marked for Life by Emily Krepp. This book is 381 pages long. About the author, Emily Krepp is an international best-selling Nordic crime author. She lives in Sweden with her husband and 2 children. Heads up, I've never read anything by this author before. In fact, I'd never heard of this author until this book turned up in one of my searches. So, also, this book is written, I guess, in Sweden. So, a lot of names I won't be able to pronounce at all, like your last names. I'm going to try my best to announce the first names so you can have some idea of who it is I'm talking about along the way. But I don't want to, just keep butchering someone's name. I think I do good to get the first name out halfway right. So I'm just going to stick with that. Also, I am going to use the 2 central characters' last name because they are basically who the books are centered around. Oh, and I'll use the DA's last name also. So yeah, the DA and the couple that's bought front and center. I'll mention their names first and last names along the way, but everybody else, it'll just be first names. Also, I have interjections I like to make along the way. These are what I call my sidebars or either my interjection. Sidebars are just little things that when I say sidebar, I'm either telling you what I was thinking at the time I was reading, whatever I was reading during that chapter. Or either sidebar could also be a little bit about myself. That I would like to share with you all. But when I say, or if you hear me ask a question, 9 times out of 10, that's me interjecting my own personal questions, again, about what is going on in the book at the time I am reading it. So please just follow me, and those sidebars are going to be my thoughts, and questions are going to be my questions. Now, I think for the first time, I'm going to do 2 different videos of the same thing. This first one is, I guess, a spoiler alert or semi-spoiler alert. Since I have not completed reading the book, I don't know, that there's spoiler alerts. But if you don't care to hear, my little interjections and sidebars, this is not the video for you to watch. I will upload the same video where I'm just going through the narrative straight through, and I won't have many comments or questions. Okay? Also keep in mind that this is my interpretation of the book thus far. So, sit back, relax, probably need to grab a snack, and we can get into it, guys. Upon returning home from a walk, Kirsten Yulan has found her husband lying dead on the living room floor. The 911 dispatcher's clock shows that the call came in at 1942. Sidebar, or question rather. Am I the only one who struggles with telling military time? I mean, I can do it, but I really have to stop and think about it. It just does not come natural to me. But here is something that does, and that's numbers. I have a knack for numbers as long as I don't have to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. In other words, your birthday or anybody's birthday, age, number of children, how long you've worked somewhere, height, weight, anything that has a numeric value, I just simply seem to be able to remember. Why, I don't know. But yeah, I've had that for as long as I can remember. And apparently, military time does require a little adding and subtracting. All right, I digress. Back to the story at hand. Excuse me, guys. The victim, Hans Ulan, was in charge of the asylum seekers at the Immigration Board. At the time of his death, he was being described as having a powerful jawline, weather-beaten skin, graying beard stubble, and graying temples. Despite often being in the media, archive photos didn't deflect the aged body lying before the detectives. Hans' wife, Kirsten, which I believe in English is pronounced Kirsten, so sometimes I may use those two names interchangeably simply because I know that's what that is. Okay, Kirsten was described as being a heavy-set woman who's long overdue for a trip to the hairdresser. Sidebar. This couple supposedly is very rich, or at least wealthy enough to move around in elite circles. But all the money in the world doesn't necessarily make you aesthetically pleasing in someone else's eyes. Back to the story. How or why did two journalists at that, one from each competing newspaper, along with the detectives, show up at the Hewland house at the same time? Question, does that sound strange to you all? Now we meet the hotshot DA, Yana Berzelius. She is described by her peers as being brilliant and beautiful, but stiff, aloof, and too formal. After winning a big case, she was contacted by her supervisor and told she would be working on the Uline case. Yana and her colleagues are going over the information or the evidence they have as for now on Hans. Question number 1. Why is this 7-year-old girl, along with her parents and some friends, in a cramped space? Question number 2. From what are they trying to escape? Question 3. What's the significance of the 6-letter number combination she's found? Okay. In chapter 1, We already learned that Hans was shot twice, but now we learned that it was the second shot that actually killed him. Kirsten is being questioned formally by Detective Henrik. She tells him that Hans was a hard worker and had recently been promoted. Kirsten was reluctant to say anything about or regarding her husband's work, but she eventually admits that there was improper behaviors taking place at the immigration board. Things such as shady bookkeeping, assaults, thefts, etc. But when asked why they didn't have children, Kirsten replied, they wanted to, but time ran out when Hans was killed. Question: why do we, I don't mean you and me, but why do we, people in general, always want to side-eye people who don't have children, especially women? Men get a pass to a certain degree because it's thought that it's in our nature, women's natures, or in our DNA rather, to nurture the growth of children. And men, I know personally a lot of men, well, not a lot of men, but a few men who do not have children, and nobody thinks twice about it. But if a woman doesn't have children, and let me say this much, excuse me, guys. Today I think I know just as many women who choose or who have chosen not to have children as I do women who cannot have children. Matter of fact, I believe I know more women who just made the decision. They knew they didn't want to have kids, and at least they found this out before they had children. But anyway, I just thought that was one of the things that really always irks me. We don't have to explain to anybody why we don't have children, or we shouldn't have to anyway, women. Okay. And another question I had along this time was, is Kirsten always going to be referred to in an unflattering light? When confronted with letters found in a closet in her house, Kirsten vehemently denies being aware of them. She tells Detective Henrik that he should speak to Hans' secretary of 20 years, Lena, because she felt she could tell him more about the inner workings of the job. Both Detective Henrik and D.A. Berzelius highly suspect Kirsten knows more than she's letting on about her husband's life leading up to his death. So the 7-year-old girl and others have been smuggled into Sweden, only for the adults to be killed as the children were forced to watch. You just can't get any worse than that. Now, sidebar, I bet these children are being used in some form of trafficking. Yana was, I'm sorry guys, I lost my place. Oh, bear with me, here I come. Now, Yana woke up from a recurring, vexing dream. She's had this dream all her life. Sidebar. For as long as I can remember, I too have had vexing dreams. In my case, the dreams are different in that they tend to be present day, but they always take place either in my childhood home or in my grandparents' home, which was technically my first home. Now, the house I grew up in, we thought it was kind of haunted, but we didn't have any proof. But they torn their house down, I guess about 3 or 4 years ago now. And it's just dawned on me that since I've been reading this book, I'm still having crazy dreams, but they're not taking place in that house anymore. I'm not aware of any torturous thing that happened in that house. In fact, that kind of stuff typically doesn't bother me. But I digress. Back into the story I go. Before going to work, Yana eats a bowl of muesli. And muesli is a cold cereal. So, sidebar, I learned something. I'd never heard of muesli before, but when it was said that she ate a bowl of it, I figured it was a cereal. I just didn't know if it was hot or cold. I was, for some reason, thinking, once I saw that, it must be something like oatmeal. Okay. Detective Henrik and Mia meet with Hans' secretary, Lena, where they find that Lena's and Kirsten's versions of Hans' work ethic differed greatly. Police officers Gabrielle and Anna are knocking on doors to further investigate, but Anna is nowhere to be seen. Gabrielle, was waiting on Anna when he notices his blood sugar is too low. He rang a doorbell at another house, but still no answer. He spots a security camera just as he passes out cold. Sidebar. I see that we assign names or female names in this country that are male names in Sweden, hence the name Gabrielle. And in a few notes we'll talk about Ola. I believe his name is Ola and not Olaf. But in this country, Gabrielle and Ola are primarily female names. But now they don't just always have to be, because I have 2 daughters. My oldest one's name is Skylar. That was at one time more of a man's name or a boy's name, but I didn't like it on the males. I liked it for a female, so that's what I named her. My youngest daughter's name is Gavin. I didn't really pay that name any attention too much growing up, but then the older I got, my husband's initials, we wanted to give our youngest daughter his initials because my oldest daughter is not his child, but so I gave my oldest daughter, Skylar, my initials, and so that's how my daughter ended up with her dad's initials. But you don't see very many black women walking around with these names, so I like that. They're unique in that sense. They're both male names primarily, but to me, I like them better on girls. Okay, back to the story. So, now both the girl and her friend Milo have been captured. Question: why doesn't the girl have a name? That irritates me. The camera footage has been released and reviewed by surveillancer Ola, See, I told you we were going to run across the man named Ola. As usual, the camera surveillance doesn't quite go to Hans Street. The only significant thing the coverage revealed was a boy walking past. The boy was described as wearing a dark hooded sweater that hid his face well. Sidebar, I'm sure it did. If you're out to commit a crime, why would you walk around without trying to disguise yourself? Okay, 2 hours into the video footage, it dawns on Ola that the boy was the only thing he'd seen. Police already suspect that Hans was killed by a boy. So the girl, Demila, and Esther are being transported to their new home in Sweden. Detective Henrik is sexually frustrated. He thinks he's gained too much weight, so he secretly goes on a diet, hoping his wife would find him more attractive again. And it seemed to work for one time, but it only worked for that one time. One night, he asked her, I think her name was Emily. It may be Emma. If you've read the book, get down in the comments and tell me what the wife's name is. But he asked her permission to start going to the gym a couple of nights a week. She turned him down flat. Sidebar, or rather, question, but why? Detective Mia has been a good fighter since she was a kid. Her brothers were 5 and 6 years older than Mia, and they were constantly challenging her to fights with them or other neighborhood children. She had no friends throughout school because her peers felt she was too snooty. An elderly man has found a small boy between the ages of 8 and 9 dead. Police suspects the boy was somehow linked to Hans's death. The girl has now been branded and given a new name, Cheer. Okay, later on I'll keep that to myself. Moving on. I bet Yana was branded as a little girl. That's why she kept having the recurring vexing dreams. From this point on, all the girl is allowed to do is fight. The man with the ugly scar, the girl's captive, or who I believe is the children's captive, continuously urges her to go for the eyes, throat, crotch. Kirsten finds out police have spoken with Hans' half-brother Lars, or Lasse, as he likes to be called, and Kirsten, was none too pleased. But why was she so defensive? That was a question, guys. Why was she so defensive? Lasse tells Detective Henrik that Hans cut him off financially about a year prior to his death. Eventually, Kirsten admits Hans cut Laza off because of his gambling habit, but this wasn't news to the police. Hans even tried to set up a trust for his nephew Simon, but Simon was a minor, which meant Laza still had access to the money, and he gambled it until it was all gone. Then she learns that meaning Kirsten and Hans' financial records would be investigated or reviewed. Wow! Detective Henrik tells Kirsten that she is the only suspect they have. In other words, if you are hiding something, Kirsten, now's the time to speak your piece. Kirsten, come clean. But Kirsten insisted that she didn't know the deceased boy. Interjection. I wonder if the deceased boy was the girl's friend, Demilo. Detective Henrik goes to the bank to review, he goes to the bank to review the Ulan's financial records. He sees that 40,000 kroner, which is something else I learned new. I think it's the equivalent of the US dollar. So Henrik finds that $40,000 or kroner have been withdrawn monthly for the past 10 months. The shocks keep coming, though, when he finds out that it wasn't Hans doing the withdrawing. It was his wife. Oh, Kirsten. I wonder, was Hans aware that she was doing it? But really, Kirsten? Wow. Henrik confronts Kirsten with what he found out at the bank. At first, she denied doing it, but he called her bluff. Kirsten realizes that she must finally come clean, so she tells him. She says she's been getting letters threatening to leak embarrassing info to the newspapers about them if the Ulans didn't pay $40,000 over time. Then the ugliness of Hans is revealed. She tells him that Hans both verbally and physically insulted and assaulted her, basically throughout their marriage. Slowly, she reveals to Henrik that Hans began forcing himself on other women and girls. Henrik tells Kirsten that the threatening letters have her fingerprints on them. Hans R's the women and girls in exchange for permanent residence that never comes to pass. Part of the reason Hans tortured Kirsten is because he knew she couldn't have children. Sidebar. God always knows best, meaning if they had had children, Hans, being the creep or monster that he is or was now, might have R''d them as well. When detectives go to speak to the man they think wrote and sent the threatening letters, he tries to outrun them, but Alas, he was caught and arrested. The girl, Chair, is being trained like a prize fighter. Although we don't know why. Okay. Now, Brazilians and the detectives are going to view the deceased boy's autopsy report. When they stepped off the elevator at the morgue, the hallway was dimmed and a light flickered out. Sidebar, I bet that was creepy. Now, another sidebar about me. Growing up, I had quite a few health issues, and I spent like the first 12 years in and out of hospitals for one reason or another. But my mother, it was and still is terrified of death. Now, she's already accepted Christ as her Lord and Savior, and that's all you need. And she knows that. She knows that the dead is conscious of nothing, but that lady is extremely scary. One time, I don't know if it's that way now, but I know when I was in the hospitals on a regular basis, the morgues were always like on the bottom floor. They weren't places that you would just happen to wander up on. But somehow we ended up on this floor, right? We were on the right floor, but my mom took a wrong turn. We did not go in the morgue, but a door or something opened up. My mom screamed and carried on so much. She set bells off everywhere, screaming, crying. She about left me. I could see. They came out there. They didn't know who was the patient. She was hysterical. So from that day to this one, if she's got to go anywhere with me in a medical facility, she about won't get out the car unless she knows exactly that the morgue is not going to be there. She is terrified of that. In fact, there's this one doctor's office here up the street from where I currently live that was at one time a funeral home. She wouldn't come in there. She would not come in that doctor's office. She would tell me to be outside when she got there because she was not coming in, and that's just what she meant. Another time, she was taking me somewhere, and I don't know if I said this or not, but I really don't fear death. As I get older, some things I find scarier that used to would not faze me at all, like elevators. But I'm still not hysterical about being on them. But death is quite calming to me. But one time she had to take me somewhere. And it's always the two of us somewhere out somewhere. And this time, we got out the car, and as I was getting ready to open the door, she stepped back. She said, "Wait a minute." She said, "Agents, let's see." She said, Northeast Agency on hospice. Hospice? Ain't that where people go when they get ready to die? It's a good thing I can see some, because I ain't see her no more. Oh boy, she cracks me up being so scary. But she loves a good scary book, a good scary movie. She likes haunted histories. She doesn't watch ghost hunters or anything like that, but she loves stuff about dead people. She knows she's gonna die one day. We all do, but she is extremely scary. So when I seen this about the light flickered off in the hallway where the morgue was, that reminded me of that story. Okay, I'm sorry guys. Back to the story. The medical examiner walks them through each of the many bruises the little boy has. At some point during the conversation, the autopsy review rather, the question of drugs come up. Sidebar. I think the boy was drugged as opposed to him knowingly doing drugs at such a young age at the time of his death. Okay. When the inmate turned the boy's head to reveal the branding, it was all Yana could do to keep from passing out flat. Okay, guys, this is the end of the first installment of the Marked for Life books. Like I said, I've never read anything of hers before, but I am going to finish this series, and I think I'll probably I'll start to find more books by her. I like the way she tells a story, and she keeps you just scooting closer and closer to the edge of your seat, or at least it does me thus far. But anyway, hopefully I can have this uploaded to YouTube before I go sit down at night. I doubt I'll go to sleep, but hopefully, like I said, I'll get it up tonight, and then between now and Wednesday of next week, I hope to have the second installment of this book uploaded to YouTube. So if it's anything you want to ask me about this particular critique, feel free to get down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Now, visitors, feel free to join. Subscribers, let's make them feel welcome. And if you haven't already, subscribers, I need you to hit that notification bell so you will be notified every time I post a video. Same for you visitors as well. Please like, share, comment respectfully, and once again hit the notification bell. In the meantime, until we read again, God bless. Thank you for listening.